All right, we're back. I have a lot of questions to answer, so let's just get right into it.
Hello, Frater. You probably already know how much impact you're having on the lives of others with your video, but I thought I'd mention anyway. Thank you so much for putting me on my spiritual path. I have three pertinent questions to ask about the great work. The first is about silence, because Liam Thomas Christopher says if people are even listening to your ritual, it saps that ritual of strength, and you even made a video about that. I want to ask, what happens if I'm in the middle of doing like the neophyte ritual and somebody accidentally listens in, or someone accidentally walks into the room? What do I do then?
Yes, it can sap the strength of your ritual, especially for beginners, mainly because your attention is brought to it. Where attention goes, energy flows. Even if you don't know if they're listening in, but you know they're around, you kind of assume they may be listening in, and your attention is brought to it, and your ritual work will begin to lose strength. Now, I don't particularly have this issue anymore, because I have my own temple room, which my girlfriend knows not to go in, and I do my work either when she's not home or when she's asleep. But I know that many people do not have the luxury of their own temple room, either because they're not old enough to have acquired it yet for themselves, or they may be in an apartment with neighbors right on the other side of paper-thin walls. I remember those days. So you really only have three choices. You can either continue, you can pause, or you can quit. There is no one right answer here because everyone's circumstances are going to be different. It really depends on how open you are with whoever you're living with, whoever may be listening or walking in. If you're keeping your curriculum private and secret, you're probably going to pause or quit. But if you're open about it enough with who you live with, you should be open enough to let them know that you would like to not be disturbed during your practice time. It may have to come down to scheduling around the other people in your life. If you have to pause or quit for any length of time, just make sure you find a better time to fit it in.
Another question is the four adorations. Exactly what are the four adorations, and what happens if I miss one? Because today I was in the middle of an SAT and I missed the adoration to Hathor and I was horrified. What happens when I miss an adoration, and how do I repent? Given that I must do at least 6 months of the neophyte grade, does that mean 6 months with each day having 4 adorations? Do I have to start over tomorrow when I miss an adoration today? Thank you for all your help, and it's a great honor to be able to speak to you this directly. Thank you.
The four adorations is a ritual designed to get you in sync with the cycle of the sun. It's probably my least favorite ritual, simply because it has to be done 4 times a day. And who's got time for that, right? But it does have its benefits. Now, just because you miss one doesn't mean anything's going to happen. That's really the only consequence of not doing it, is nothing will happen. So I wouldn't beat yourself up over it. It's not like you're going to incur some punishment, but it's also not an excuse to not do it. The only real repentance is to just pick up where you left off and continue, to resolve to carry on instead of wallowing in disappointment, which is what happens when you're developing a new habit and for some reason you just miss it. You're going to feel disappointed, as you experienced. The only real course of action is to just continue doing what you're supposed to do. Now, you're not going to have to start completely over from the beginning of the grade unless you miss many consecutive ones over a period of time, say like a couple weeks. Then you may need to begin anew. But if you just forget one here and there, I wouldn't worry about it. Just continue on. And I appreciate the question, and thanks for the kind words.
Hi, Frater. How are ya? I'm Kaina, and I have about 4 questions for you. No particular order. I am reading from something that I typed these up on, so you excuse me if I look off to the right. Okay, so getting down to the get down. In one of your videos, you said that we each have all the signs of the zodiac. My question is, what is or how much difference does a sign make when there is no involvement in a chart? For example, my interactions go from Capricorn to Leo, and I have nothing in Cancer. I have nothing in Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Virgo, Pisces, or Aquarius. I do have Capricorn rising, but I have nothing in houses 1 through 6. I read that somewhere, that blank houses shouldn't be considered problematic or dead areas, but that these areas won't necessarily play much of a role in that current lifetime. And I was curious to know what you knew about that.
I would concur with that. Not having a natal planet placement in a sign or house simply means that that sign and house is not pronounced, and that it's just going to be an average area for you. However, that doesn't mean that you won't be affected by the transiting planets that enter those signs and houses. They just won't have any natal planets in that area to interact with. So yeah, it's neither good nor bad. It's just average.
I have picked up astrology recently since starting to listen to your videos. I did have previous brief and small occurrences where I looked it up before, but nothing like what I'm undertaking now, and it's really cool. I want to know, does it all just come down to the position of celestial bodies? Is there anything left up to chance when we can divine so much information already? I did think about that question for about 2 or 3 days before I decided to ask it. And the conclusion I came to was that, the only part that isn't written maybe is my decisions or our decisions, and that the celestial bodies really represent what is possible and what is potential. But the other part of that equation is the role that we choose to play in it, even though, the charts are saying stuff that we are more or less likely to do or encounter because of the positions of these things. So again, the question is it anything left up to chance? Is it all just written in the stars or what?
Ah yes, free will versus determinism. Anyone who begins to study astrology will soon come face to face with this question pretty early on. And when I first did, I went back and forth for a while, but was leaning more towards determinism, that everything was written. But after having spent quite a bit of time on it myself, it is of my opinion that it's more like what you're saying, that it does come down to choices. However, most people don't choose. Not consciously. Most people are reactionary as determined by their programming, their subconscious habits and programming. So the average person who's not into magic, who's not into self-development, who's not working on becoming the best version they can possibly be of themselves, who's not aware of their habitual subconscious habits, is going to be the plaything of those old gods. The chart is essentially your energy map of your life, but as we know, the planets, signs, and houses mean more than one thing, and so the way that energy plays out is anybody's guess, as there are too many possibilities and correspondences to know for certain. And there are positive and negative sides to each planet, sign, and house. And as such, It really does come down to the way you look at things, your perspective, your mindset, how you have developed yourself. The more negatively you look at things, the more likely it is you're going to experience the negative side of those planetary transits. And if you're more positive, the more likely it is for you to get the positive side of those planetary transits. That's not to say that if you're always positive, bad things can't happen. Everyone gets thrown a curveball every now and then, but you'll be better equipped to handle it, and they're less likely to happen, just as my one negative friend is more likely to experience the negative side of his transits. So first and foremost, it's your perspective and the way you look at things. And then your choices. I had talked about my other friend who had Mars in the third house and would always get into arguments. Mars, communication. Not just seeking them out, but they would find her. Fights, arguments. She got hit by a bus and then somebody yelled at her for laying in the street. Now, if there's no other outlet for that energy, that is going to be her default. Those kind of things are going to happen because of her mindset. But if she started taking consciously that Mars energy and put it into writing or some other third house skill, then it would alleviate the effects of that Mars energy, diverting it into something constructive rather than having it play out by default in arguments and fighting. So, as for free will and determinism, it's both. The energy in the chart has to play out. You can't get rid of the energy, but you can transform the energy. And that's where the free will comes into it, by choosing what to do with it. And you won't always be able to do that. Some events just tend to be fated and are going to happen regardless. The things that you don't have control over. But in many other instances, you will have a choice. And that's where knowing your astrological correspondences can really help you in that regard. That friend is no longer a friend, as she chose to delete me off of Facebook. I assume over a post or something. Again, defaulting to Mars in her third house. Anger, communication. And unless she chooses to transform that Mars energy in regards to communication in some other way, she will be dealing with that kind of thing the rest of her entire life, being at the mercy of that planet placement, as the vast majority of people are.
Third question, I've heard you say time and time again that a lot of the information is out there on various subjects. It's just saying the same thing over and over, which makes you feel like you can just go anywhere and get a general knowledge of something like astrology or tarot or whatever it is that you're looking for. My question is, for that, do you know of any comprehensive astrological sources that you would recommend? I would really like something like an astrological concordance, astrological grimoire. Do things like that exist? Maybe not grimoire. That might not have been the right word, but you know, a gigantic source of information instead of having to piecemeal this stuff from this site and take something from this website. I do use astro.com, but you know, I have found that some places have different interpretations, and I want to know what is the truth about the stuff. Is it just based on my opinion or how I feel about it? I am also interested in the history of the zodiac. I would like to know where this information came from. So far, I've seen it as old as ancient Sumeria, and that's really cool. It's pretty interesting. So any information or recommended astrological reading you can give me on that would be really cool.
Well, as far as I know, an all comprehensive every single interpretation, concordium of astrology, as you put it, does not exist. At least I haven't read one. I had to piecemeal mine together. And yes, most of them pretty much say the same things. But it is enough to get a general basic knowledge of astrology, which will expand with experience. Experience at interpreting charts, collecting correspondences, and just beginning to think in astrological terms throughout everyday life. For example, when most people see like flies, they see flies, whereas I see evidence of Saturn energy as something nearby must be decaying and decomposing, attracting them. And when I come across things like that and think of what are the correspondences, I write them down. You know, maybe I should write an astrological encyclopedia concordium book. But even I wouldn't have them all, as I'm always coming across new correspondences all the time. And that's through everyday life. How the planets interact with one another through various transits and aspects, in which signs, all of that's pretty well documented and are the things that are repeated over and over from source to source for your basic understanding. But my advice would be to not rush it, to take your time. I know you want an all-inclusive encyclopedia of astrology, but it's best to get a general understanding first, get the basics down, and I think you'll be surprised at how a lot more knowledge will start coming your way unexpectedly after having focused on learning the basics for so long. As for the history of astrology, I believe the Babylonians were first credited with astrology, but I mean, from the beginning of time, man has been looking towards the stars. Astrology and astronomy were both the same science at one time. They weren't really separate. The Mayans were pretty far removed from Babylon, but still have one of the most accurate calendars that we know of. All we know is it's from time ancient, and what we've been told about it. None of us have any first-hand knowledge or were there. But if I recall, Babylon is first accredited with astrology.
The last question, last and final question. Wow, this is almost 5 minutes. I'm so sorry. The last and final question is in regards to honey jar spells and sigils. When you have several amounts of money that you need or that you want that may or may not be related to each other, like maybe there are my house bills or something else that came up, some gifts that I want to buy or whatever, I don't know. You know, would it be advantageous to do a honey jar for the total amount, or do I need to do spells for each one? And the same question with the sigils. You know, if I have several that I've made and now I'm ready to charge them up and fire them off, do I need to, would it be advantageous to do them all at once? Like one gigantic charging and then a bonfire? Or do I have to, I mean, is it, I don't want to say have to, is it bad to do them all at once? Or dangerous to do them all at once? Or should I be doing them individually? I mean, yeah, okay. That's my questions. This is Kayena. I'm subscriber to your channel. I'm going over to Freewill's channel now because I'm done with the Magic Mystery School until I get to those other subscriptions that you have to offer. And I'll be looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks.
In the case of the money spell / honey jar, if you know you're going to need X amount of money to cover a variety of things, I see no reason why you can't do one for the lump sum amount. It would be advantageous to you to know exactly what you need it for, though, and not just, oh, I need a lot of money to cover whatever. Those tend to be not as effective. In the case of sigils, I've known people to do a few at a time, and I only know of one case where it supposedly messed somebody up and caused them problems, where a psychic was able to see, quote, some strange glyphs in their aura. But typically sigils are going to be for different things, and as such I like to focus my energy on one thing at a time. That way the energy is not scattered. I want to put my all into each one. And so for a money spell / honey jar, yes, and on the sigils I would say no. But you could always try it and see if it works for you. A lot of the fun of magic is being able to experiment. Now, as I said with the money spell, it's to your advantage if you know what you're wanting the money for, and if you do that, you can just cast for that instead of the money. Sometimes that tends to work out better, because money is a means to an end, not the end itself. And in my experience, it's better to cast for the end result rather than the means to that end result. And I do appreciate the questions and for you sending in the video. Thank you.
So the first question is, what are some helpful tips traveling abroad as a magician? For instance, I went to Peru for about 21 days this summer, and I was on the path of the neophyte for about a good 6 to 7 months, and I'm going to stay probably there for another 5 or 6 months. I'll get to that point later. But the thing was, when I was in Peru, I was staying in hostels, and I was traveling to various locations all the time, and unfortunately I wasn't always able to keep to the strict and rigid schedule that I was accustomed to back in my home, because I was always constantly moving, and a lot of things are outside my control sometimes. So which ended up happening is I eventually fell out of like my routine for a while, and then I eventually picked it back up when I came back home. So that's the first question.
Well, I myself don't do a whole lot of traveling, but knowing the curriculum as I do, I don't really see much of an issue during the neophyte grade, because there's not really a whole lot of required implements. I mean, you can cast a circle with your finger and not have to pack an athame. You pack a few candles, your tarot deck, and your curriculum books, and you should be good. Now, if you're concerned with people overhearing you and privacy, as the first viewer in this video was wondering about, as long as you're alone, you can perform the exercises and rituals under your breath. But in your mind, you want to be shouting them and vibrating them as you would normally. It's not as good as doing it full out as you normally would in the privacy of your own home, but it's better than not doing it at all. Now, the adept can do it in his mind no matter where he is, but, as a neophyte, you're not there yet. But it is good training to be able to get there. Being able to do your magic in places you normally would not be able to do it. Now, once you're past neophyte and get into the elemental grades, I can see it being more of an issue. Because one, it's going to take more time to do, and two, you're going to need more implements. I mean, unless you have some pocket travel size Enochian elemental tablets you're carrying around with you, traveling is going to make those grades difficult for you. But where there's a will, there's a way. Maybe that's exactly what you need. Print out some small Enochian tablets, travel size, and pack them along with you. You don't really need an athame if you're traveling, if that's going to cause issues in traveling. You can still use your fingers in a pinch. If anything, it would be a definite exercise in adaptability. I'm sure part of the appeal of joining a lodge is having everything in one spot. But for those on the go, You're going to have to improvise a bit, but you can do your rituals and exercises under your breath, as long as in your mind it is strong and loud. And I think Donald Craig may have written about that in Modern Magick. So yes, it would be a challenge, to say the least, but I think that if you prepare for it, that you can actually practice while traveling and sticking with your curriculum. It would definitely make things interesting. More interesting than heading down to my basement temple, I'm sure.
And the second question is, how exactly do I deal or cope with failure when, I'm on a path, like the specific path for the neophyte grade, and I am doing good for a while, and then I end up, falling off the boat due to some external issue. Like, for instance, this month, a wide variety of negative things externally ended up happening to me, which, resulted in me entering a very bad stage of depression, which I haven't experienced since I was a very young child. And it's just, I was at a very low place, let's just say that, and it resulted in me falling off my routine for about 2 weeks. And in the past week or so, I've been feeling better, and I started getting back into it. And as you can see by these books, I was quite invested in what I was doing, and just even further evidence right here, like you can see in this bad boy right here, like stuff's breaking apart right here. So you can see I've been doing it. But anyway, that's besides the point. Yeah, like I was doing very well for a while. I just started getting back on the routine again. But due to my perfectionist personality, it's very, very hard to accept defeat a lot of the times, and I'll just end up, backing off all at once. And the thought actually crossed my mind with this whole curriculum. I was going to eventually, stop doing, but eventually, what, like, when the going gets tough, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep persisting and keep going at it. But anyway, those are my two questions, and if my birthday does help, if you want to view my natal chart or something for additional information, it's January 31st, 1994. Again, it's January 31st, 1994. The location of my birth was Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, and then the exact time was 11:23 a.m. And as always, thanks for the videos, man. You're doing an excellent job. You're reaching out to various people. I've been with you since you were at like 1,000 subscribers. Now you're almost 10,000. But anyway, keep it up, man.
Again, it's just like the first viewer's question on the four adorations, where he's concerned about missing one. You just have to continue on. In my experience, anytime you're developing a new habit, just as you're on the verge of making that habit permanent, the subconscious may end up rebelling on you, causing all kinds of things to happen. And that's just part of the curriculum itself, or you should at least consider that part of the curriculum itself, is being able to power through that. Because you can have many circumstances, just as you've experienced, that are out of your control, making it more difficult to have the time to do your practice, or being worn out and you really, really don't feel like doing it, to the extreme of everything around you seems to be falling apart. It's not that uncommon. In fact, when I had my accident that busted up my back really bad that I had talked about previously, was at a time that I had quit smoking and forgot my nicotine patch that day. And when I realized that I had forgotten my patch, I was like, well, you know what? I feel pretty good. I probably don't even need the patch. I think I'm over this. And just within a few hours of that, bam, I had the accident. And the first thing I did was ask the nearest guy for a cigarette. So it always tends to happen right when you're on the verge of getting that habit that you want to establish and making it permanent. Knowing that this can happen, you're going to have to make that commitment ahead of time. Things really start to change within the elemental grades. You need to be prepared for it. And any chaos that is ensuing around you, is helping prepare you for that. Commit ahead of time. I think about when my indoor cat had gotten outside and was lost for 3 days and was able to coax her to me in the middle of the night in the rain, knowing that the 4th of July was just a few days away and no telling where she'd run off to then if the fireworks started going off. I had to make the commitment ahead of time that when I grab her, no matter what happens, I'm holding on. Yes, she did freak out. Yes, I got scratched up pretty badly. And yes, it looked like a scene out of Ace Ventura, with me running, holding on to a screeching cat towards the house. But I got her inside. Now, if I wouldn't have made that determination ahead of time and just grabbed on and hoped to get her inside, I most likely wouldn't have been able to get her inside, let her go, and dropped her as soon as the scratching and biting started commencing. I took my licks, but I got it done. So it's important to commit ahead of time that no matter what happens, you're going to make the time to get it done. And it's going to happen to everybody. If you miss a day, don't beat yourself up about it. Just continue on. Once you get past that barrier and have made it a habit, you won't be able to imagine not doing it. You won't know how to be able to stop. So yeah, when things start cropping up or you start feeling like, no, I'm just going to skip the day, I don't feel like it, I'm tired, or all hell breaks loose, just know that you are on the verge of accomplishing that which you have set out to do. And you're just going to have to power through it. And I appreciate the question and for you having watched for so long, being a long-term subscriber. Thank you very much. Now, I may take a look at your chart, but that is going to have to wait until, part 3. We still have more questions, but we're out of time for today. Just a quick reminder that the Laws of Magic 3rd cycle will begin on October 29th. So we only have a little over a week to go until the sign-up period ends. So make sure you get in on that for those who have not taken it already. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for sending in their video questions and for all of you watching who have made this channel the success that it is. And I will see you next time. Take care.